but I know there's this kind of play between something that's very stark and a kind of groundless ground. And actually the molding paste is on a sort of gray ground, so it's almost like there's something behind these forms. And so there's this starkness of this white, there's this kind of switch over to something very dark, and then there's this reflective surface, which is kind of none of those things. So this is a way of describing how I'm seeing it, and the experience of being in these paintings. And maybe we'll touch on that sort of thing as we go along. So.
Okay, does this work? Yeah. So that's a painting of mine. It's called Fluid Bridge, and it's 45 by 78. And my paintings are all about color, but for me, color is a very active thing. I use color in such a way that colors are really influenced by each other. They're really changed by each other, and that interdependence is so important. That all of you who have worked with color know how changeable and magical it is, and that's so key to my whole engagement with painting. And I learned a lot from color field painting back in the 70s when I was a student, and there are things about that painting that have really stayed with me as a goal, but there are things that I also want to do more than or get beyond or whatever. But painting with color, I don't know, just so much to say about it, but the interaction between colors, the sequencing of colors, calls for colors to expand. And there are things that happen in interactions of color. How far should the color go? And color painting very often is very expansive, but to me it's also important for it to stop. I think painting stops. Paintings are bounded, they're very limited fields. And what's the relationship between that flow and that openness and expanse? Stopping, and aren't we always expanding and stopping and contracting and expanding, and isn't that so much part of our experience? I'm very involved with that. And then what kind of drawing does this activity require? And this particular painting, I think, is close to how I feel about that. Is what's the difference between a curve and a straight line? What's the difference between different kinds of edges and what they do to the color and the expanse and the stopping and the starting? And then what kind of a space does all this activity require? And there are so many different kinds of space I don't want it to have. I don't want it to have a traditional space. I don't want it to be totally flat. I don't want it to be decorative. I don't want it to be like a slice of nature. I don't want it to be this. I don't want it to be that. But when I get to a space that I'm excited about, it's a happy day. And I'm happy with this one. It's sort of an impossible, complicated, contradictory space. And I don't always get there, but I'm happy with this painting. I'm happy to have a chance to show it. So that's it.
Yeah. This is a painting from 2017 group of paintings that I did dry pigment on canvas. I call them slants. And they were pretty much colored, not experiments, but they were color oriented. And what I've always tried to do is personalize my color. Over the years, going to school and learning a lot of stuff, thing that I noticed in great painting was that the artist always paid a lot of attention to the surface. Whether it's thin or thick, paid a lot of attention to the surface. Whether it's opaque or transparent, painting starts with the surface. So I took that in, and I saw a lot of great painting, and all of the paintings that were great to me described that. Having said that, I had to figure out where I was going to go, how I was going to get there, and how I could find my voice and on some level try to figure out a way to become a part of the canon. And there was not that much space. So I went through a process of rejecting a lot of stuff. I became very opinionated, and I sort of became very isolated, and I worked in seclusion for a number of years. I studied at the Memphis Academy of Arts in Tennessee, which was a small school that was based on Black Mountain College and the Bauhaus. The director had gotten a sculpture degree from Yale, and he hired people from everywhere, Oklahoma, different places. So I have always had this penchant for design, a penchant for color, a penchant for simplicity and clarity. My mantra is, in painting, is to use what you need. If you don't need it, don't use it. That's not a minimalist statement. That's a statement about painting. If you need a lot, use a lot. If you need a little, use a little. I think it has to have clarity. And so I navigated through these things for a number of years. I left Memphis at University. And I got there, it was another ball game. I met Plymouth Greenberg there and Hilton Kramer. Had seminars with Greenberg, and I had been struggling for decades trying to figure out pictorial space and what I wanted to do with it. I had decided, I had started making some of my own paints at that point, but I hadn't really figured out what I wanted to do. I knew I liked geometry, I liked color, I liked design, but when I met Greenberg, he was turning everything upside down and backwards. So after that, I started to realize that what I wanted to do was flatten the space. I wanted a flat space, as flat as I could possibly make it. But I didn't just want a flat space, I wanted animated space. I want things to be on the move. I want the painting to have a conversation. I want it to move from side to side, top to bottom, and I want it to be something pleasing to look at. I want the painting to have a presence and a personality. And I want it to meet you halfway. That's what I try to do. I've done paintings through my career, which has been it's been strange because I know all of the major black artists in New York when I first came to New York, all the people that's making a lot of money now and things and everything. I was the youngest one, of course. But nobody was making any money or anything. We were still painting, still making money. And I just went in, I figured out what I wanted to do. I've always tried to return abstract painting to its purest form. And in its purest form, painting is simply a mark on a surface. That's where it starts.
So James, I have a question. This kind of figures into one of the questions where you're talking about in terms of your education.
Yeah.
What is the question? In terms of your training, were you taught any, you're talking very particularly about the surface of it and all that. Were there, do you think, and this goes out to the entire panel as well, what kind of lessons can be given to someone who's interested in learning abstraction? What kind of skills should they be taught?
I think that you have to develop a skill set, and you have to figure out what is meaningful to you in abstract terms. You also have to understand fundamentals. It's not something that you just sort of jump into. I had a friend of mine going on with us. He didn't think I could draw because I was abstract. And I told him, I said, if you are a betting man, you are about to lose a lot of money. Because I can draw, and I would pretty much bet that everybody on this stage can draw.
Okay, but wait, I want to.
Go ahead.
So.
Jill, microphone.
What?
Microphone.
I remember when I was a student at Benton and I found out that Kenneth Nolan didn't know how to draw, I was scandalized. And, you know, Larry Coons, who we respect so much, he has a background in music. And he, you know, but putting that to the side, I am not sure that all the fundamentals are necessary. I think what's important is ways of seeing and being able to see in really fundamental ways, which is very atypical, to be able to strip down and be able to see in very fundamental ways.
I have two definitions of drawing. In the Renaissance, definition of drawing was to draw from, to get information from, like you draw blood, draw from nature, from the environment, get it from what you see and feel. The other definition that I have is drawing as a means of recording ideas. So that's the approach that I use. But I can draw in aggregates.
Because I teach art majors at Pratt Institute, and I get them coming in sophomores, juniors, seniors, and they're still convinced that people do abstraction because they can't draw. This is very vexing, and certainly for being their teacher as well as being an abstract artist. And I wonder if Carl and John could address if this has become something you've encountered in your careers, or if there are other skills as well that you should be inculcated within abstraction.
Drawing from my own experience and the artists I've encountered over the years, I think sometimes, you know, the skill set of drawing realistically can be useful, but it isn't, I agree with Jill, it isn't absolutely necessary. What is necessary is an ability to approach the object and with a sense of purpose, and the purpose could include an ability to design. That is, we all have these abilities to weights and measures and relative sizes and so on. How do we organize it on a flat surface, you know? And once we get that done, we tend to have our own sense of color because of our own experience going through life, where we grew up, what we see as we go along. All these things feed into your natural approach to how you express your visual sense. The teacher is there to sort of guide you into expressing what you want to do, and that would require you to have control of your materials, you know, through experimentation, through teaching, to teach you how to use whatever material you want to use. But it always comes back to the individual. What is it exactly that you want to do? You're working on a flat surface usually, but not necessarily. So it's for me, the teaching is almost a one-to-one kind of experience, and with the teacher sort of guiding you to where you want to go.
John, what do you have to say about
Continuing with this thought